Hello, attentive listener. Today I'm going to tell you the spooky story of a town where mystical stories happen to people. Title: The Haunting of Hollow Creek. Hollow Creek was a small, forgotten town nestled deep in the woods, known only to those who lived there. It was surrounded by dense forests and shrouded in an eerie silence that never seemed to lift. The town had a dark history, whispered about in hushed tones, but never openly discussed. One summer, a group of 5 friends, Jack, Lisa, Mark, Sarah, and Tom, decided to explore the legend of Hollow Creek. They were thrill seekers, always looking for the next adrenaline rush. They had heard stories of an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, a place that locals claimed was haunted by the spirits of a family who had mysteriously vanished decades ago. The mansion stood at the end of a long, winding road, its decaying facade barely visible through the thick trees. As they approached, the air grew colder, and an unsettling feeling washed over them. Ignoring their growing unease, they pushed open the heavy, creaking door and stepped inside. The interior was in ruins, with broken furniture and shattered windows. A thick layer of dust covered everything, and the air was heavy with the scent of decay. The group split up to explore the mansion, their flashlights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Jack and Lisa headed to the basement, where they found a series of old, dusty photographs and journals. They began to piece together the story of the family who once lived there, a couple and their 2 children. The journal spoke of strange occurrences, unexplained noises, objects moving on their own, and a growing sense of dread that eventually drove the family to madness. Meanwhile, Mark, Sarah, and Tom explored the upper floors. In one of the bedrooms, Sarah found a child's diary. As she read the entries, she discovered that the daughter had an imaginary friend named the Whispering Man, who spoke to her in the dead of night. The diary ended abruptly, with a final entry that read, "The Whispering Man is coming for us." As they reconvened in the living room, a sudden chill filled the air, and the lights flickered. They heard a soft, eerie whispering coming from the walls, growing louder and more insistent. Panic set in as they realized they were not alone. Shadows moved independently of their own, and cold fingers seemed to brush against their skin. Desperate to escape, they ran towards the front door, but it slammed shut with a force that shook the house. The whispering grew louder, echoing through the halls. "Get out," it seemed to say, but the door wouldn't budge. Suddenly, Tom was yanked backward by an unseen force, his screams echoing through the mansion. The others tried to grab him, but it was too late. He disappeared into the darkness, his screams fading into silence. They ran through the house, looking for another way out, but every door they tried was locked, every window sealed. The whispering voices grew louder, forming words that chilled them to the bone. "Join us," they chanted, over and over. They saw fleeting glimpses of ghostly figures. A woman in a tattered dress, a man with hollow eyes, and 2 children whose faces were twisted in fear. In the attic, they found a small window and managed to break it open. One by one, they climbed out onto the roof. As they did, they felt cold hands trying to pull them back inside. They tried for a long time to free themselves, and finally they succeeded and jumped to the ground. They ran through the woods, the whispering voices following them, growing fainter with each step. When they finally reached their car, they drove away without looking back, the town of Hollow Creek disappearing into the distance. But the horror was not over. That night, as they tried to sleep, the whispering began again. It seemed to come from the very walls of their homes, a constant, insidious presence that haunted their every moment. One by one, they succumbed to the whispers. Jack was found wandering the woods, muttering to himself about the Whispering Man. Lisa disappeared without a trace. Mark and Sarah were found in their homes, their faces twisted in terror, their ears bleeding. Tom was never seen again. Years later, Hollow Creek remains abandoned, the mansion standing as a silent sentinel. Locals warn against venturing there, speaking of the group who dared to enter and were never the same again. They say that on quiet nights, if you listen closely, you can still hear the whispering, urging out to anyone who dares to come close. The whispering man is waiting.